Good evening, and welcome to the final stretch of the Faith and Science Fundamentals webinar series. We are continuing with the Geology and Paleontology module. Today, during our 15th session, we will talk about some of the most famous existing fossils. Dinosaurs. The word dinosaur means terrible lizard and describes a group of extinct terrestrial reptiles whose remains are found in the Mesozoic layers. If you remember the geologic column that we explained last week, the Mesozoic layer is the central area of the Phanerozoic era and is made up of the three main layers: the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. Since they are extinct, we can't study dinosaurs directly, but we can study them thanks to the millions of fossils that we find all over the world. Most of the dinosaur body fossils that we found are bones and teeth. Many times the bones are disarticulated and mixed, but in some cases, we find complete or almost complete skeletons with the bones still in place. Dinosaur tracks are also very common. In many parts of the world, there are traces of different types of dinosaurs. Some prints or tracks are round in shape, and others have 3 fingers. These photographs are from the Toro Valley in Bolivia. These are from the Spanish Pyrenees Mountains. And these are from the southern region of Valencia, about 100 kilometers away from my house. These are just a few examples of sites that I've visited where dinosaur tracks have been found, but they can be found in many places. Dinosaur eggs fossils are also quite common. These are some dinosaur egg fossils found in museums. But this next picture, I took these photos myself at a site in the Pyrenees Mountains. And you can see here an example from that same site that I'm going to show you. Can you see the white things here? Here's another one. One is seen better than the other. But this plaque right here, this side that's a little bit wider, well, these white chips are fossilized pieces of eggshell. Now, I hope that by now in our series, you have become accustomed to trying to identify in any scientific description what is data and what is interpretation. And if so, you may be asking things like, if we only have bones, how do scientists know that dinosaurs were reptiles? What characterizes dinosaurs as a group? Couldn't they just be a mix of different types of animals, reptiles, mammals, and birds that have been classified together because they're in the same layers? How do they know if the tracks or footprints and eggs were from dinosaurs and not from other animals? So, if these questions are the types of questions that occur to you, it's because you are now professionals in the discriminations between data and interpretation. Let's answer them one by one. At present, we classify animals by their anatomical and physiological characteristics. In elementary or primary school textbooks, reptiles are defined as animals that have skin covered in scales, lay eggs, and are cold-blooded, which means that they don't maintain a constant body temperature and depend on the temperature of their surrounding environment to regulate it. In the case of dinosaurs, all these things are difficult to verify because we only have their bones. But it turns out that reptiles also have specific characteristics in their skeleton that differentiates them from other vertebrates. For example, most reptiles have 2 holes on each side of the skull behind the eye sockets. And dinosaurs have them too. And the lower jaw, which in mammals is made up of one single bone, in reptiles is made up of several bones. And one of them, the dental, is the one that holds the teeth. Dinosaurs have that same structure. But as we saw last week, classifications are somewhat artificial, and animals often do not have all the characteristics of just one category. One of the fundamental characteristics of reptiles is that they creep. In other words, they crawl or move with their body very close to the ground. And that's because of how the legs are articulated in the ones that actually have legs. If you look at a lizard or a crocodile, the legs stick out laterally from the body. It's not that way with dinosaurs. The hip structure of dinosaurs is different from that of other reptiles, but also from that of mammals. The human femur has a round head, and that head fits into a rounded socket in the hip that allows us to have a lot of mobility in the legs. In dinosaurs, the head of the femur was shaped like a cylinder and fit into a hole through the hip. This caused the legs of the dinosaurs to go down vertically under the body and not out to the sides. And this allowed them to walk and run very effectively, but not turn very easily. With this information, we also answer our second question. What characterizes dinosaurs as a group? Well, this type of joint in the hip is a distinctive feature of dinosaurs. But there are others, also in the bones, especially those of the front and back legs. The humerus and femur have special ridges and protrusions that are only found in dinosaurs and that were used to join them to the muscles. So, despite having only their fossils, we have enough information to conclude that dinosaurs were reptiles and that they had specific distinguishing characteristics that justify their classification as a separate group from the animals that we know today. Another important thing is that not all the reptiles of the Mesozoic layers are dinosaurs. Paleontologists have studied them in detail and classified them into different groups. If you paid attention to the definition at the beginning, you heard that the dinosaurs are terrestrial. Marine reptiles found in the same layers are not dinosaurs. They are classified in other groups, such as Ichthyosaurus, which are shaped like fish or dolphins, or the Plesiosaurus, which has a very long neck. And flying dinosaurs such as pterosaurs are not considered dinosaurs either. The last question that we asked ourselves was, how do we know that the other remains, such as tracks and footprints and eggs, belong to the dinosaurs? This is a very legitimate question. In the case of the tracks or the footprints, it's quite logical to attribute them to the dinosaurs because they can coincide, they match the shape of the size and of the fossil bones of the dinosaurs. But with the eggs, things are not so immediate. When fossil eggs were discovered in the Mesozoic layer, they were assigned to dinosaurs because they were the most abundant animals in those layers. At that time, it was an interpretation, but later, egg fossils with dinosaur embryos have been found, so now we are pretty sure that at least some dinosaurs laid eggs. What else do we know about dinosaurs? Well, lots of things. A few specimens of dinosaur fossils have been found that were so well preserved that the skin can be seen. Those fossils have confirmed to us that they had scales, and in one of them, they were even able to extract the pigments from the scales. Normally, the colors of the dinosaur models that we see in museums or on television are imagined or invented. But in this case, we know the real color that the animal had. Also, remember that what we said last week. Feathers are clearly visible in some fossils, so at least some dinosaurs had feathers. The tracks or footprints also give us a lot of information. If we have a trail with several prints in a row, we can know if the animal walked on two legs or on all fours. By the separation between them, we can know if it was walking or running. And also, if the front part of the back or the back part of the track is more marked or deeper, it can be deduced if the animal was walking uphill or walking downhill. In many places, there are not only tracks of one animal, but of many. So they also give us information about their social life. Some species of dinosaurs moved in herds, and by the size of the tracks, we can tell if these herds were made up of individuals of the same age or if there was a mix of juveniles and adults. The teeth give us a lot of information about the type of food the animals ate. By observing the teeth of the dinosaurs, scientists have discovered that most species were herbivores. Only 1 out of every 7 to 8 types of dinosaurs were carnivores. So, why is it that when we think of dinosaurs, the first thing that comes to mind is a Tyrannosaurus rex? Well, the movies and museums are to blame for that. In both movies and exhibits, what is most striking are the huge and dangerous specimens, and that is why they are much more represented than their cohabitants. But in reality, dinosaurs were a very diverse group of animals. In terms of size, there were animals or dinosaurs the size of a chicken. Most were the size of an ostrich or a cow, and some were larger. The most gigantic ones have been found in Argentina and could reach 40 meters from the head to the tail and 8 meters in height. As with the larger mammals today, these giant species, similar to the largest mammals that we have today, these were herbivores. In fact, paleontologists have compared the diversity of dinosaurs to that of today's mammals. We tend to think that dinosaurs are a very specific type of animal, but in reality, there were as many differences between them as there can be between a cat and a giraffe. There are many interesting things about dinosaurs, but I want to spend the time that we have left to discuss the implications that dinosaurs have for the origins, which is the focus of our series. If you would like to learn more about dinosaurs from a scientific Christian perspective, I recommend the following resources. Nuevo Tiempo has a magnificent series of documentaries about dinosaurs that you can access on YouTube. There are a total of 14 episodes, each 28 minutes long, that present the subject in great detail and are very interesting. And on another note, Southwestern Adventist University has been running a world-leading dinosaur research project for more than 20 years. It's an excavation at a site located in the state of Wyoming, from which they have already extracted more than 25,000 fossils. In the first episodes of the Nuevo Tiempo series, the history and operation of this project are explained. But if you still want more information, you can find it on the university website and in another specific documentary series about this project called The Dig, the excavation. And if you are passionate about dinosaurs and would like to live the experience of being a paleontologist for a few weeks, the project organizes an annual expedition to the Wyoming site during the month of June, in which people from all around the world can participate. You can find more information on the website of how you can get access to this. But if you can't go and look for dinosaur bones in situ, you can also access them virtually thanks to the university's online museum, where you can consult photographs and 3D models of the fossils that have been found so far. In the list of additional materials and resources, you can find the links of the documentaries and the project website, as well as a lot of articles about dinosaurs. But in the time that we have left, we're going to comment on some questions that frequently come up in the creationist field about dinosaurs. The first is, curiously, did dinosaurs exist? Some people believe that dinosaurs did not exist, that they are an invention of evolutionists, or, as we said before, that they are a mix of different types of animals. I hope that with everything that we've explained so far, it has become clear to you that dinosaurs did exist, that they are a group of animals with distinctive characteristics that allow them to be classified and identified with relative ease, and that serious creation scientists do not doubt their existence. On the contrary, in the Adventist Church, we have several paleontologists who are studying dinosaur fossils or tracks in different parts of the world, and even a large research project on dinosaurs that has been going on for more than 20 years and that has provided us with a great deal of information about these fascinating animals. This doesn't mean that we know everything, though. Far from it. As in any other branch of science, new paleontological discoveries can show us that some previous interpretations were wrong and are clarifying our knowledge about dinosaurs. For example, anatomical studies of the skeletons of various dinosaurs have shown that positions in which they were displayed in many museums and old documentaries were wrong. It seems that the T-Rex didn't walk upright like Godzilla, but more in a horizontal way with their tail parallel to the ground. So many museums have had to disassemble their skeletons and reassemble them. It's also been discovered that some dinosaurs that were once considered different species could actually be juveniles and adults of the same species. Now, it's normal that these things happen when one only has bones and tracks to reconstruct the animals without being able to observe them directly. This shouldn't make us distrust science, though, but we must be aware that the best interpretation at a given moment may end up being discarded when new data appear. The second question that I get asked quite a lot is, did God create the dinosaurs? Well, although it seems like an easy question which can be answered with yes or no, it's actually a trick question. If I were to ask you, did God create the lions or did God create polar bears? What would your answer be? Because lions and polar bears are carnivores. And also, polar bears live in an extreme climate that probably didn't exist before the flood. So we could say that God probably didn't create them as they are now. According to what we've explained in previous topics, and although we don't know all the details, God could have created a type of feline or a type of bear, both herbivores, which changed after sin and diversified and ended up giving rise, respectively, to different types of big cats and different types of bears. But if we don't go into much detail, most creationist Christians have no problem imagining God creating lions and bears, or their vegetarian versions. But they do with dinosaurs. Why the difference? Why are there a lot of Christians who believe that God didn't create dinosaurs? Well, there are several reasons, but the main ones are that they are not mentioned in the Bible, that they are gigantic, violent, and ferocious animals, and that they are extinct. Well, let's briefly analyze each of these reasons. It's true that the Bible doesn't mention dinosaurs, but that's completely logical because the word dinosaur wasn't coined until the 19th century. Some think that the descriptions of the two beasts that appear in the book of Job, Behemoth and Leviathan, could refer to dinosaurs, but most theologians do not agree with this interpretation. Be that as it may, the fact that the name of an animal does not appear in the Bible does not imply that it was not created by God. The Bible doesn't specifically mention kangaroos, butterflies, or many other animals either. Regarding the ferocity and dangerousness of the dinosaurs, we've already explained that it was not a characteristic of the whole group, but of a minority species. What happens, though, is that thanks to Hollywood, those are the best known species. And when we look at a model of the Tyrannosaurus rex, and we must always remember that it's a model because no one has ever seen a live T-Rex, it may seem to us that God would never create such an animal. But the same reasoning could apply to other animals, such as, for example, the great white shark. The great white shark is a killing machine. It has several rows of sharp teeth that are constantly changing, and it's a very violent animal that attacks first and asks questions later. But that isn't the general trend in the world of sharks. Sharks come in many shapes and sizes, and most of them are very calm and pose no threat to humans. But once again, thanks to the movies, when we think of sharks, what comes to mind is the great white shark. And yet, I've never heard anyone ask that or say that God didn't create sharks. The same thing happens with dinosaurs as with sharks. The vast majority of species were herbivores and were peaceful, and many of them were similar in size to today's animals. So this reason doesn't seem to hold up either to the claim that God did not create dinosaurs. Then, why are they extinct? Last week, we said that the fossil record is full of remains of species that aren't found today. Whole groups of animals that lived in the past became extinct, probably during the flood, but that doesn't mean that God didn't create them. Take, for example, the trilobites that we used last week as an example of complexity at the base of the fossil record. Well, the fact that they're extinct does not imply that God did not create them. Perhaps the main reason why many Christians believe that God did not create dinosaurs is because they think that if God had created them then, He would have also preserved them in the ark, and then they would still be alive today. This reasoning makes sense, but it's not the only possible alternative. Many groups of animals became extinct during the flood or after the flood because they couldn't withstand the environmental changes or because humans killed them off. And it's possible that there were dinosaurs in Noah's Ark that later were unable to survive. It's also possible that God decided not to put them in the ark for reasons that had nothing to do with their origin, perhaps thinking about the survival of the human being. Large herbivore dinosaurs needed tons of food, and plants were scarce after the flood. Carnivores could be a danger to man, especially considering that the human species rapidly degenerated after the flood, as we can see in the brutal decline in longevity in just a few generations. So there are many possibilities, but they are all speculation. I personally believe that we do not have enough data to affirm that dinosaurs were not created by God and that they have some other origin. We're talking about a group with a great diversity of sizes and ways of life, with hundreds of species, and with only a few that were violent predators, as it happens in many other groups such as sharks or mammals of this time. The last question that I would like to comment on is, when and how did the dinosaurs become extinct? The creationist and evolutionist hypotheses agree that the dinosaurs died in a catastrophe. From conventional science, several causes have been proposed. The best known is the impact of a meteorite, but there are others such as massive volcanic activity. For believers in the Bible, the dinosaurs died in the flood, but we already explained a couple weeks ago that the biblical flood was a brutal geological event in which there was probably a lot of volcanic activity, tsunamis, earthquakes, and falling meteorites. So as far as the how, there's not much difference. but there is quite a difference in the when. Conventional science places the extinction of the dinosaurs approximately 65 million years ago, and the Bible only a few thousand years ago. So where does the 65 million year date come from? Explaining this would require a full session, but I will try to summarize it in a few minutes. When you read in a scientific article that a fossil or a rock is X million years old, that may seem like data, something that has been objectively measured, such as size or weight, but the reality is more complicated. The process by which the age of a rock is determined is called radiometric dating, and it is not a direct measurement. Rocks are not labeled with a manufacturing date, but many rocks contain radioactive elements. What is a radioactive element? You've all heard of uranium, and you know that it's used to produce energy in nuclear power plants and to make bombs, and that it's dangerous. What makes uranium dangerous, like other radioactive elements, is that it's unstable. Well, this is the periodic table, which contains all the types of atoms that we know and that make up all matter. Air, the furniture in this room, people, and rocks. Some elements on the periodic table, such as uranium, are unstable and spontaneously transform into another element on the table. For example, uranium turns into lead. In this transformation, energy is released, which is what we know as radioactivity. It would be something like this. When radioactivity passes through living cells, it affects DNA and produces mutations, which is why radioactive elements are so dangerous. Nuclear physicists have discovered that the radioactive decay that takes place in rocks occurs at a regular rate for each element. Uranium turns into lead naturally at a measurable rate, and therefore, if we know how much uranium the rock had when it was formed and how much it has today, we can do some simple mathematical calculations and know the time that has passed. It's as if we had a faucet that drips into a bucket, always at the same speed. If we measure the amount of water in the bucket and we know how many drops fall in an hour or in a day, we can calculate how long the faucet has been leaking. The theory of radiometric dating is simple and logical, but for the results to be valid, a series of conditions must be met. We have to be certain about the initial amount of the radioactive element, and we have to be sure that throughout the process the system has been isolated, that no uranium or lead has entered or left the rock. The problem is that radioactive decay is a very slow process, and the results of the calculations are usually in the range of hundreds of thousands or millions of years. How can we be sure that during all that time no uranium has been lost, and that no uranium has been added to the rock from the environment? Continuing with the example of the bucket, it's as if a drop falls every 1,000 years, and we have no way of knowing if at some point someone has removed the bucket, or if it has rained, if some water has evaporated, or if the faucet was leaking faster or slower in the past. There are many things that we do not control and that could give the wrong result. So creationists think that this is the case, that there is something in the radiometric dating method that is not right. And that is why it gives results of millions of years. We believe this because the results don't coincide with the biblical dates of events. But we also have some scientific evidence to suggest that radiometric dating is wrong. One of these evidence has to do directly with dinosaurs and was discovered by a paleontologist named SCHWEITZER. Dr. Schweitzer was studying fossil bones of a Tyrannosaurus rex, and when she cut into one of them, she noticed the smell of putrefaction or rot. And that surprised her a lot, and she decided to investigate what was inside that bone. While looking at it under the microscope, she discovered organic tissue, blood vessels, and cells. So when she published her discovery, the scientific community jumped on her saying that she was wrong, that it was impossible to find anything organic in bones older than 65 million years of age. They told her that her sample was probably contaminated by bacteria, and that that's what she had seen. But Dr. Schweitzer repeated the observations. Other people verified the experiments, and indeed, it was shown that inside the fossil there were reptilian blood vessels and blood cells. Soft tissue has since been found in many other dinosaur fossils and other species that are supposedly millions of years old. So why hadn't anyone seen it before? Well, because nobody was looking for it. And how is this important to us? As I said before, the presence of soft tissue inside fossils is powerful evidence that they are not as old as conventional science proposes. The organic matter of a dead animal rots and disappears. Under very special conditions, it can last a few thousand years, as we can see with the pyramids of Egypt. But it is impossible for proteins, DNA, or blood cells to survive for millions of years inside a bone. Well, I'm going to stop here. This is an inexhaustible topic that we have to stop at some point. Remember that you have more information in the list of additional resources and materials. And next week will be our last session. We will conclude by talking about some fossils that generate great expectation and some doubts. Hominids.